Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, my dear brothers and sisters, to another episode. Alhamdulillah, we've reached this far, and majority of the things that we've covered by now, by the time you stand behind the Imam and you start listening to many different stories or else, you notice that exactly this is what I should be expecting from the Quran itself. Now, when it came to Makki and Madani surahs, how do you know the distinction between the two? I'll tell you something really important. Allah gave us numerous amount of stories in the Quran. Amazing, isn't it? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have to give us stories upon stories upon stories in many different chapters of the Quran? And you notice that even in the long main surahs that we have, Allah gives us stories as well. But where do we find them mostly? Majority of them, we find them from Makki surahs. After understanding Makki surahs and Madani surahs, it is time now to explain some of those. In Makki surahs, we will find the stories of prophets, and also we find many more stories, even other stories, people of Jannah, people of hellfire. Why does Allah have to explain to us all of these descriptions and stories? There's a very good reason why. Human beings, they love storytelling. I promise you, you start studying stories upon stories today, and then you make your own circle. Or maybe the most common thing to do is establish a YouTube channel, or maybe Instagram, or anywhere that you can keep your long form videos, and then you start giving in stories. What happens next? You become a storyteller. Everybody would want to come to you so that you can explain some stories to them. Basically, it's part of entertainment. But to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to the Quran, storytelling or giving stories, it wasn't just for a reason to, it wasn't just for the purpose of entertainment, but it was for something even more greater than that. And what was that? Is to allow or grant mankind the ability to live more than the amount of years that they've lived. Subhanallah. What do I mean by this? For example, let's say, you're not a book reader, you're not a bookworm, for example. You don't really read that much books. But whenever you listen to a podcast, or maybe you look at maybe a short series, and you have someone explaining something, and you find that that person gives you story after story after story, or maybe of fables and that, of people of the past, maybe the Israelites, and many more, what do you notice? You notice as if you've lived those years. It's as if you've lived 1,000 years, isn't it? Now, when you learn about Ad, the people of Ad, which was Hud alayhi salam, if you learn about the people of Salih, and you learn about the people of Shu'aib, you learn about the people of not only that, the people of Musa. What do you know? What do you come to understand? Through those stories, you come to happen to live in those years as if you've been living for thousands of years of experience, though, but something that we need to bear in mind as well. Among the wisdoms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, giving us stories is not only for us to be entertained, nor having the ability to live as if we've been living 1,000 years, but we have to learn how to contemplate and reflect from the stories and derive not laws alone, but also derive the things that we can avoid so that we can be on the safe side all the time. I'll give you a simple example. Look at Fir'aun, the Pharaoh, who dealt with Musa alayhi salam. The reason why I'm relating this story to you, perhaps by now you have already reached to Surah Al-Shu'ara, somewhere around there, or maybe you are Surah Taha with the Imam behind you. It can be wherever you might be. But if you are on any of these surahs at the moment, you notice that there is a part where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains to us extensively about Musa alayhi salam, especially in Surah Taha. Look at the tyranny of Fir'aun, not only that, and look at the boastfulness of Fir'aun, the pride that he had, and it was an honor, that was just kibr. Alright, bear that in mind. It was him being a mu'anid, a person that literally will stand on a path that he knows he was very wrong. He was on the very wrong path. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he went for Isra and Mi'raj, a very common story, while he was descending back to earth, him and Jibreel alayhi salam encountered a woman who was literally, from her was emanating a very beautiful fragrance from among the fragrance of Jannah. The Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was intrigued and quite surprised actually, and then he asked Jibreel alayhi salam, who is this lady, or where does this scent come from? You know what Jibreel alayhi salam said? Jibreel alayhi salam said something really, really outstanding. Said that this was a woman who stood for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala against the Pharaoh, subhanallah. So what was the actual story? This woman literally, she was combing the hair of the young girl of the Pharaoh. As she was combing the hair, what happened is that the comb fell off her hand. And as she went for the comb, she said, Bismillah, or La ilaha illallah. She mentioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The young lady who was having her hair combed, she turned to the woman and she said, what? Guess what she said? You mean my father, right? Allah, why does she have to mean her father? The lady said, or the old woman, what did she say? No. The Lord of your father and the Lord of yourself and my Lord as well. Subhanallah, look at that. You know what the little girl said? The little girl told her and asked her, how about if I tell my father about this? Would you be okay with that? She said, yes, it's fine. What did the Pharaoh do? The Pharaoh decided to punish her by burning her children alive. Even the young one, when she wasn't able to bear the pain of seeing that little child being burnt and thrown into the fire pit, you know what the little child said? The little child spoke. Literally, a very small infant telling her mother, oh mother, bear patience. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us, and the rewards from Allah are greater than what we are going to encounter now from the punishment. And subhanallah, she allowed the little child to be punished and be put into the fire pit, and she jumped herself inside that fire, subhanallah. But what about Musa and the Pharaoh? Did the Pharaoh stop, or was this another Pharaoh? Remember, in Egypt there were pharaohs upon pharaohs upon pharaohs. And the Pharaoh that dealt with Musa alayhi salam in Surah Al-Shu'ara, look at the beautiful dialogue, just to summarize. You notice that Musa alayhi salam, after running away from the Pharaoh himself, from his persecution, and also the murder that the Pharaoh wanted to commit by taking away Musa's life, unjustly, Musa alayhi salam was informed and also commanded by Allah to go back to the lion's mouth, exactly in the house or the center or the heart of where Fir'aun was. Immediately as he reached there, the first thing that he happens to say that, oh, the Pharaoh, I want you to give me back the Israelites whom you have enslaved for years, because you do not have the right to do this. And remember that your Lord is the same Lord that I worship and the one who created you and I. What does the Pharaoh do? He starts starts brainwashing him with certain ideas and starting to tell him that and holding him guilty for what he has come to do, instead of dealing with him in the most best way. Remember, the Pharaoh was a politician. Imagine him being in Twitter and being like, look, he's come up with all of this. He can't even remember the favors that we gave him. And وَفَعَلْتَ فَعَلَتَكَ الَّتِي فَعَلْتَ وَأَنْتَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. You did your deed that you did and you ran away, and you now are among those who are ungrateful. Are you really going to do this? أَلَمْ نُرَبِّكَ فِينَا وَلِيدًا وَلَبِثْتَ فِينَا مِنْ عُمُرِكَ سِنِينَ. Have we not brought you up when you were such a young boy, and you lived among us, and you know us for so many years? Don't you know about that? What does Musa alayhi salam tell him? He tells him, oh Pharaoh, listen carefully. This is not how it works. Stop taking me down to a guilt trip, all right? This trip of guilt, this is not what we want. Let's deal with this man to man, exactly. وَتِلْكَ نِعْمَةٌ تَمُنُّهَا عَلَيَّ أَنْ عَبَّدْتَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. Is it because of those favors that you had the right to enslave the Israelites? That's when the Pharaoh came back to line and said what? قَالَ فِرْعَوْنُ وَمَا رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Now all of these stories, you notice that majority of them, they are Makki stories. They are related to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, so that the Sahabas not only وَكُلًّا نَقُصُّ عَلَيْكَ مِنْ أَنْبَاءِ الرُّسُلِ مَا نُثَبِّتُ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. All of those that we relate to you from among the stories is not only to make your heart firm, but also وَجَاءَكَ فِي هَذِهِ الْحَقُّ وَمَوْعِظَةٌ وَذِكْرَى لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. In those stories, there has come to you the truth and also maw'idah, that which you can teach to others and reminders. Remember, this is to prove the truthfulness of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also to grant us something that we can relate back to and grant us more experience in our lives. So read these stories with love and contemplation, and also take from the experiences of those of the messengers, so that you do not live upon the same mistakes or things that we should not do, and at the same time take from them the good that we can utilize in our lives. Remember, stories normally, they raise our emotions really high so that we can contemplate even deeper. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us a people of contemplation, and see you in another episode.